They come back to Bitcoin because that looks the strongest in the chart at the moment, for one. It's the easiest, it's the most reliable so far. And if you've got other things going on in your life, trying to add trading to it, it's just a no-brainer just to hold one thing and make it nice and simple for yourself. Enjoy the process.
So you mentioned looking at who's buying and who's selling. What kind of things would help you gauge when we do start to see a rotation of money?
I'm looking at the dominance because we need to see a significant breakdown there where simply you want to see that liquidity come out of the dominance and into the riskier assets.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Binance Studios. My name is Jessica. Thank you all for joining once again. Now it's time for another deep dive and interview. This time we have Jason Pizzino, who's an investor, content creator, and has daily videos on TA, market sentiment, and macro overview. We'll be taking a look at some of the different indexes of the crypto market and helping to break down what has been going on. So first of all, Jason, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. How are you doing?
Amazing. Thank you very much, Jessica.
Great to have you. Thank you for the time. Really appreciate it in what has been a busy week for the markets, let's say. And I think for everyone watching, it would be really insightful just to get almost a sentiment gauge from you of where we think the market is at the moment. And I think to start, if we could take a look at the fear and greed index, because across the crypto industry, this is quite a good gauge for indicating, where the market is now and what does this mean?
I think the gauge, like a very simple line, it's almost like it's complacent, but to the other extreme. Everyone seems complacent, like they don't even care about the price at the moment. And it just looks like it's winding up eventually to go higher. Of course, there's no confirmation of that yet, as there never, we haven't got that yet, but it feels like that.
When it comes to the charts and on-chain data that we're seeing at the moment now, is there anything that's kind of standing out for you? You've mentioned there that things do seem to be a little bit more relaxed, lackluster, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about the market sentiment, which is mostly on like a feel basis. It's obviously the sentiment, what people are feeling and thinking and so on. And then we try to make that objective using the crypto fear and greed index. In terms of, say, things like on-chain data, I don't necessarily use that as much in my analysis. Over the years, been in it since 2017, I got swept up in the on-chain stuff back then. If you remember, I don't know if you were there then, and it was a lot about wallets, how many wallets were being produced. This is on-chain data.
Yeah.
And it was just all showed the charts going up at the peak of the market, which typically means, well, they're trying to tell us that the market had to go higher, but we can look back on history now and it basically went down from that point. So I kind of stay away from more of that on-chain data because it tends to look quite bullish at the peak and quite bearish at the lows. And things like the ETF flows. We've covered that extensively on our channel, where the peaks of the ETF inflows happened around the peaks in the price of BTC, and the bottoms happen around, well, the most outflows happen around the bottoms in the market. So it's kind of like we use it as a contrarian signal, if anything, as opposed to going with the trend of what the on-chain data does.
What kind of things do you look for? What kind of things, if you kind of open up your laptop first thing in the morning, to give you a gauge of where the market is heading, and what can some of our listeners and watchers from today, what can they take away from that?
I'll open up the charts first because I want to see what the market is doing. And essentially the price, as simply as it is basically just buyers and sellers. If there's more buyers buying, it's going to go up. If there's more sellers selling, it's going to go down. So as simple as that sounds, it's like, well, why can't everyone make money if it's that simple? So I'll start with the charts, having a look at that. And then some of the charts in particular are, say, the stablecoin dominance, to see where that's at. We've heard a lot about altcoin season potentially coming up over and over and over again for this entire cycle, yet there hasn't really been an altcoin season per se, similar to previous cycles. And you can see on the dominance charts, in particular USDT dominance, that it's basically been stuck in a range for the last several months. And when you compare Bitcoin against a few other altcoins, a lot of the money has just continued to flow into Bitcoin as opposed to the other altcoins. And then you can see that on the USDT chart, USDT dominance chart, because the money is still flowing, but it just is flowing mostly, not all of it, but mostly into one cryptocurrency, being BTC for now. And that's, of course, what everyone's waiting on. They're all waiting on their altcoin season.
So you mentioned looking at the who's buying and who's selling, and that's an indication of where the market could be going. When will there be an altcoin season, and what will the indicator be that there is a change in wind? Because 2024 was really heavily a Bitcoin year. So what kind of things would help you gauge when we do start to see a rotation of money potentially leaving Bitcoin and going into alts, or leaving other more traditional assets and moving into the cryptocurrency and altcoin space?
When it comes to the alt season, I'm looking at the dominance, because we need to see a significant breakdown there where simply you want to see that liquidity come out of the dominance and into the riskier assets. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I want to see a breakout on the altcoin chart. And I'm primarily looking at total 3. So that's one of the charts there that encompasses all of the altcoins except for Ethereum. Well, Bitcoin's not an altcoin, but they're the only 2 that it doesn't have, Bitcoin and Ethereum, just so you can get a makeup of everything else out there. We've also got a total crypto market cap chart on our platforms that excludes the stablecoins as well. So it gives you a little bit of a clearer reading on the altcoins. And when I see those break out, then you could start to suggest that we might get a stronger altcoin season.
So you mentioned TradFi being a kind of a metric or a gauge there. So maybe could you give us an overview of kind of the wider macro environment at the moment and how you're viewing the traditional financial space and what that could possibly mean for us in crypto?
Yeah, a good point there with the traditional market, if that does flow over. The last couple of cycles we've seen Bitcoin and the NASDAQ have similar peaks, and the S&P 500 continues just that little bit longer. It's made up of different companies and different sectors. So you've got a cleaner look there of the NASDAQ with tech stocks, and of course crypto obviously being a technology, and Bitcoin there being like a tech money. So they've both peaked around November. Funny that we're talking about it today, because we're seeing a new all-time high for the NASDAQ yesterday and today. So, I mean, if history is to repeat, as they say, it could be a matter of time until we see more of that money flow out into Bitcoin, and then maybe into altcoins. I say maybe because obviously we haven't seen any signs of any breakouts yet. But of course, just to give that bit of hopium to everyone, we'll continue to say it hasn't broken down. So that's a good sign. And it still remains where it sits there with the altcoin. So yeah, traditional finance seems like it's still got further to go, with the stock market still heading up. So the bull market is still on for TradFi. S&P is up nearly at an all-time high. It might be at an all-time high by the time this goes live. And NASDAQ, new all-time high as well. Another thing we've seen is the US dollar continue to fall. And generally it's a bit of an easier game for commodities. So if the US dollar is falling, commodity prices tend to go up a little here. We've seen gold go up. We're seeing silver also go up. We're seeing other metals, precious metals. Palladium's gone crazy. Platinum went crazy. Palladium's also going up. And, it's just a bit more of a liquidity game there. There's more money out there again. So I think it's still a matter of time until Bitcoin continues its charge higher, depending on the altcoin that you've chosen. That's going to be the next question. And there's a lot of them out there.
And you've mentioned commodities there. And I think this kind of leads nicely into the next question, which is, what are you looking at right now as being some of the fundamentals that would really earn you that top spot as a safe haven asset?
That's a hard one for the next 12 months, because I think we're coming towards the peak of a lot of markets or a lot of cycles. Mm-hmm. I think it's a tough question. If you'd asked me a couple of years ago, around lows in 2022, I was talking about it on my channel as well. I couldn't pick the exact low, but we were talking about, it seems like it was a much better opportunity, higher reward, lower risk. That would have been the time for BTC. So yeah, I don't have a clear answer on that. For me, clear answer for everyone else. I don't know what their position is. For me, I'm still looking at Bitcoin, holding Bitcoin, and looking at other opportunities, some things like silver. But that depends on my portfolio and my risk appetite. We can put it that way. I know a lot of other people, they'll prefer altcoins.
And if you're watching, let us know in the comments. So I think the next question is, could this be the end of the traditional crypto market cycle? Have we seen an end to that now that we've seen spot Bitcoin ETFs? We're seeing, I think it's 45 cryptocurrency ETFs have been filed with the SEC since the start of this year. There is a different dynamic at play. We have got a pro-crypto US presidency. is that changing the dynamic of the crypto environment at large?
I think it's definitely making more people aware of it. And we've kind of labeled this last cycle, or this cycle we're currently in, I think we've called it like the mania, or the awareness, the mania general public sort of cycle, because we've already been through multiple cycles when people weren't interested, and then people got a little bit interested, and then it became known, but not everyone was trading it, like 2021. And now you literally have the president of the US has talked about Bitcoin and crypto. So it's like, how much further can we go? If everyone's in it and they're all buying it, maybe we do get a blow off top for Bitcoin, which is what I'm betting on. And then things unwind like they always have to do. Like tulip mania, big boom. So everyone's going to could get rich. But then if things do boom like that, they do have to come down. There's not been one time in history that hasn't happened.
Now moving on to stablecoins. What role stablecoins play in the crypto market, and then why we use them as a metric for the health of the industry?
So the way I look at it for stablecoins is that's basically the money sitting on the sideline that you can use to then go and trade Bitcoin and cryptos with. So if there is that money there, you want to see the decline of those stablecoins, because essentially that's either going to go into fiat, so basically sold out of the whole industry, or it's going to go into Bitcoin and cryptos. So we definitely want to see that liquidity come out of USDT and flow somewhere else, ideally into Bitcoin and crypto, so the price go up. Obviously, the other option is that it all gets sold out into fiat, but we haven't necessarily seen that overall over the history of the stablecoins either. Like, stablecoins haven't necessarily gone to zero. That could change. That's a different topic altogether if they start to outlaw stablecoins and force CBDCs or something else. But, just to answer the question, keep it nice and simple. Yes, that's the liquidity there. And we want to see that liquidity go for prices go up in cryptos and Bitcoin.
So it's a capital rotation that could be going into kind of Bitcoin, other alts, or possibly kind of exiting the market on the other side of things.
Exactly. There's probably a bit of everything going on at the same time.
Okay, amazing. And now kind of final question, because we've talked about the health of the market, the outlook, and kind of where the industry is going. The next thing is how to keep your crypto safe. So long-term custody, what kind of things would you give as advice to people that are watching or listening into the conversation?
Depending on the amount that they have. So we can't really assume that they have 3 figures, 4 figures, 5, 6, 7 figures. I mean, the simplest thing is go with a Ledger or a Trezor or something hardware wallet that you've got. Obviously, that then adds in the complexity of having to keep the passwords and not lose anything. So you're going to have to ask yourself, do you trust yourself initially to hold one of these things, or do you want to go with like a hot wallet on a mobile or a computer? So look, longer term, I prefer the hardware wallets. I've got systems in place to store that and make sure I've got backups. If you don't have that, then you're probably going to need to go with something more simple. But I do prefer holding my own cryptocurrency as opposed to leaving it somewhere else.
Amazing. Thank you. And now, so final few words for Ed and for the audience. When it comes to the next 6 months for the crypto market, what are some of the things in the industry that you are most excited about at the moment, as someone that does watch the charts daily, does make videos daily, and that is also investing as well at large? What kind of things are worth a mention that are, gearing you up and getting you ready to go?
It sounds so lame, but the longer I've been doing this, and we have lots and lots of members across the world, and speaking with them when they've been through multiple cycles or even just 6 to 12 months in the market, they keep coming back, and you might already know the answer, is they come back to Bitcoin because, that looks the strongest in the chart at the moment for one. It's looking like the best one. It's the easiest. It's the most reliable so far. And if you've got other things going on in your life, trying to add trading to it, which there's no guarantees of making money, is actually, far more guarantees of losing money than there is making money, then it's just like a no-brainer just to hold one thing and make it nice and simple for yourself. Enjoy the process. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to anyways. Just basically the Bitcoin, keep holding that, keep writing it up. But the difference with the majority of people is they just keep holding and hoping. If you've got a plan in play to start to take a little bit of profits and materialize it, it starts to feel real, and it's something that you'll stick with longer term. the main thing that I've seen over the years is people come and go over and over and over again. Each single cycle, they try to make money from altcoins. They fail. They don't think, well, the option, if I just held Bitcoin that went up 600%, that was better than anything they made in altcoins. It was the easiest thing to do.
Excellent. Well, we'll have to get you back on the channel towards the end of the year to see how things have played out, because it's certainly such an exciting time. Jason, thank you so much for your time today. It was great to catch up and hear some of your insights. Really appreciate it.
Likewise, thanks very much for having me.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for watching as well. Let us know how you found the interview. I am going to link Jason's channels down below as well. So do feel free to check those out and give him a follow. And also let us know what guests you want on for next week. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.